Hello, in this video we're going to look at the content in Unit 2, Activity 1. And since this is the beginning of Unit 2, I'll just give you a little bit of an overview of the entire unit. The unit will focus on story elements. That's the heading for the entire unit. And so we'll cover elements like plot, character, setting, point of view, theme, all of the major elements that make up a story. And so in Unit 2, Activity 1, we'll focus specifically at character. Now we'll get to that a little bit later in the activity. Another topic that we'll cover in Unit 2 is spelling and grammar. So we looked at the parts of speech in Unit 1, and now we're going to move on and look at how those parts of speech work in terms of spelling and grammar. And we'll look at some of the errors that students commonly make and try to eliminate them from your writing. And so to start with, in Activity 1, we'll look at spelling. So Part 1 is spelling here. And what they'll do is they'll give you 21 different rules for spelling. So if we go all the way down the page here, you'll see there's 21 different rules with examples. You do not have to memorize all 21 of these rules. I don't have these rules all memorized off the top of my head either. But it's just a chance for you to look at the different rules and in some cases some of the quirks or some of the inconsistencies in English that sometimes pop up. And if you can remember some of these rules when you're spelling, it'll go a long way to helping you become a better speller. Now that said, we do have dictionaries and we do have online searches that we can do now. So spelling mistakes hopefully are, we can make a thing of the past. We can always check our spelling. Even if we're not a good speller, we can always check it, right? And so that's kind of the reminder here, is that you want to be checking your spelling when you write your assignments in this course. There is a little practice exercise for spelling once you go through the rules. And so they're going to give you a table here, and they're going to list some of the most common misspelt words. So it's going to say, look at the words in the table below and identify those that are spelled correctly. So some of these will be spelled incorrectly, and some of these will be spelled correctly. So for example, in the first column, you can see that there's 4 different ways of spelling the word receive, and only one of them is spelled correctly. Intelligence, believe, musician, these are all commonly misspelled words, and in some cases they're misspelled in a number of different ways. And so in each column, see if you can find the correct spelling of the word. Okay? Another error that we can look at, or another problem that students sometimes have in writing, aside from spelling, is capitalization. And capitalization is kind of like a subtopic of spelling. If you're using capitalization incorrectly, it's kind of like a spelling error. Okay, and so just like we did with spelling errors, we're going to look at 14 different rules for capitalization. And some of these you probably know already. Like hopefully we know to always capitalize the word I. So Jennifer and I went to the movies yesterday. I is a pronoun for a specific person. So you're talking about yourself, so you need to capitalize it. You want to capitalize the first letter of a sentence. You want to capitalize the first letter of the names of people, organizations, and places, like Juan, Tokyo, General Motors. So if you go down the list here, again, there's 14 different rules for capitalization that you can look at. It's not overly important that you memorize all 14, but you want to get a good handle on when you should be capitalizing and when you shouldn't be. Sometimes it can get really tricky. Sometimes with a word like mother, we will capitalize that word on certain occasions, and on other occasions we won't. So for example, if we look at the example here, did Uncle George call my mom to tell her that our grandmother is with Dad? So you're not capitalizing mom here, but you are capitalizing Dad. Now you might ask why. Well, it's because Dad is being used as a name. That is what the person who wrote this sentence calls their dad. whereas it says my mom with the word my in front of it, it's not being used as a name, it's just being used as a generic mom, and we all have a mom, right? It can get really tricky, and if you have any questions about capitalization, let me know. Another one that sometimes students struggle with is north, south, east, west. There's an example of that up here in number 6. Sometimes you would capitalize a word like southwest, and sometimes you wouldn't capitalize a word like north. It depends on how you're using it. And so take a look at the rules. There is a practice exercise, and for this one, it's not actually on the website. What you'll do is you'll download a Word document, and what you're going to be asked to do is you're going to be asked to write your own sample sentence for each of the capitalization rules you have learned. Remember to also use proper end punctuation. So that means proper end punctuation. You want to make sure you end your sentence with a period. And so capitalize the pronoun I. So see if you can write a sentence with the word I properly capitalized. See if you can write a sentence and properly capitalize the first word. See if you can write a sentence and capitalize the names of people, organization, and places. Each one of these sentences corresponds to one of the 14 rules. So essentially what you're doing is you're writing a practice sentence showing that you understand each one of the 14 rules. This is practice. You don't have to submit it to me, just like with all the practice we do in the course. But if you want to send me your capitalization practice, I'll take a look at your sentences and make sure that you're properly capitalizing the words in the sentences. So spelling and capitalization are our grammar elements for today. In activities later in this unit, we'll look at other types of errors that students make in their writing. And now we move on to the main part of our activity, and that's going to be story elements. And so you're going to have a brief introduction to all the story elements we're going to look at in this unit. So we've got character, plot, point of view, theme, and setting. We're not going to try to introduce all 5 of these elements all at once. We're going to focus on one at a time. And so in this activity, we're specifically going to focus on character. And we've got an explanation of character here, and you're going to have to do your assignment for this activity on character as well too. So when you go through this material, you want to make sure you're comfortable with character and the different traits and the different ways of describing a character. And so if we start here, it says, every time you read a story, you meet new characters. What makes these characters interesting to you? Why do you remember some characters and not others? Taking the time to learn more about these characters may help answer these questions. And so the first thing we want to do when we want to investigate and try to describe a character is we want to look at their traits. So when you're analyzing a character that you just read in a story, you want to be able to identify his or her traits. And there's 4 basic traits. There's physical traits. So what does the character physically look like? You know, what are the color of his eyes or his hair or her skin color? Can we notice any features about their height or their weight? You can also, with physical traits, deal with with the way that they're dressed and the way that they look in general, going beyond just their natural sort of features. But physical traits is just essentially what does the person look like. Personality traits. These involve the person's distinctive character or qualities. So how would you describe the personality of the character that you just met in the story? Would you say that the character is nice or kind or funny or generous? Those are kind of positive traits. You might use negative traits for their personality as well too. Values. These are a person's principles, priorities, or standards. For example, friends, family, food, clothing. What does that character value? Okay, does that, when we're reading the story, do we get the sense that the character cares a lot about his friends and family? Do we get the sense that the character is very interested in food and puts a lot of effort and detail into making dinner each night? Do we get a sense that the character values clothing? Do they spend a lot of money on clothing, right? What does the character value? Okay? And then lastly, we have beliefs. These are a person's firm opinions or acceptance about a specific idea. So sometimes it can include religious beliefs. So if a character in a story is described as being religious, or if they're praying, or if they go to church, or if they go to a mosque, that would be part of their beliefs. But it doesn't always have to be strictly religious in terms of having beliefs. People can have strong opinions and strong beliefs about a lot of different things. Okay, and maybe we'll see that in the stories we look at in this unit. Now, to test your understanding of these 4 different character traits, there's a character sketch match game. So if you click here, what'll happen is you'll get a little game, interactive game that'll open up. And if you hit start, I'll give you the instructions here, and I'll just skip those. You can read those on your own, but I'll jump ahead here. What they're going to ask you to do is they're going to ask you to take these 30 cards, and you flip one over. So in this case, friends, and then you have to match it with either a physical trait, a personality trait, a value, or a belief. So if you think friends is a physical trait, and I would argue it's not, wanting to have friends and caring about your friends isn't something physical, you would put it here. If you think it's a personality trait, you would put it here. If you think it's a value, you would put it here. And it's a belief, we can put it here. So for example, let's try to put it under values. And so we got that one correct. Okay, and so 1 out of 1 is our score. And so you just go through all of these, and you'll see they're all different words that can describe either physical traits, personality traits, values, or beliefs. So something like tall, we would put under physical, of course. Right? And so it's just to give you a sense of the different types of character traits that we come across in characters. All right. Once you're done with that, there is another practice exercise that you can take a look at. If you click on Character Traits Practice Exercise here, what you'll get is another Word document that'll pop up, and it'll ask you to read this paragraph and to underline or highlight words that describe Stanley. So this is a character sketch of a boy named Stanley. And so you're just going to underline or highlight words that describe Stanley. For example, big. He's described as big, right? He's described as having large hands, huge feet. So just underline or highlight these terms. And then you're going to put them into these categories. So for example, it says he's loyal to his family. Would you consider his loyalty to be a physical trait, a personality trait, a value, or a belief? I would argue that the fact that he's big would be a physical trait, right? So see if you can fill in as many of these physical traits, personality traits, values, and beliefs as you can when describing Stanley. Okay? All right. Once you're comfortable with that, we move on to looking more closely at writing a character sketch. So we just looked at a character sketch of a boy named Stanley. Well, now we're going to look at some words that you can use when describing a character. So these are all going to be adjectives. So they're going to be different types of character traits. So intelligence, curiosity, foolish, gentle. These are all words you can use to describe a character. Ultimately, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to write your own character sketch for a character in a story in the assignment. And so we've got a sample character sketch right here on a boy named Roland. So take a look at this sketch right here. You'll see not necessarily these exact same words, but you'll see plenty of adjectives and plenty of words used to describe Roland in this little character sketch. So at this point, you will have seen 2 character sketches, one on a boy named Roland and one on a boy named Stanley. Once you feel comfortable with that, you can move on to the assignment. You're done the content, and you're going to have to write a character sketch on your own.